The Galactic Military Academy's sniper program occupied the highest peak of the training world. Its facilities were state-of-the-art, its instructors legendary, its graduates the most feared marksmen in known space. Only the best of the best were admitted, 1 in 10,000 applicants, and only after passing tests that broke most candidates within the first week. The cadets who made it were proud. They had earned their place through skill, determination, and an almost religious devotion to the craft. They arrived with standardized equipment, perfected over centuries by the galaxy's finest engineers. Their rifles were sleek, symmetrical, and packed with automatic systems that compensated for wind, gravity, target movement, and 100 other variables. All they had to do was point and shoot. Then Maya-chan arrived. She was human, which was unusual enough. Humans were new to the academy, and their methods were different. But Maya was different even by human standards. She carried her own rifle. It was not sleek. It was not symmetrical. It was by any objective measure ugly. The barrel was longer than standard, wrapped in some kind of manual insulation. The stock was worn wood, carved to fit a hand that was not hers. The scope was ancient technology, lacking any of the automatic targeting systems the other cadets took for granted. The entire weapon was covered in manual adjustments, dials, levers, markings that meant nothing to anyone but her. The other cadets stared. Then they laughed. "What is that?" a Thrax cadet asked, his mandibles clicking with amusement. "Did you build it yourself?" "From scrap. It looks like something from a museum," Avorl added, her bioluminescence flickering with barely contained mirth. "Does it even fire?" Maya said nothing. She simply carried her rifle to her assigned station and began her preparations. She laid out her tools, old-fashioned cleaning supplies, a set of weights for calibration, a notebook filled with handwritten calculations. The other cadets watched with growing disbelief. "She's writing things down," someone whispered. "In a book, like a primitive." The laughter grew louder. Jokes about primitive human engineering spread through the class. Maya ignored them all. She worked with slow, deliberate focus, adjusting her rifle by hand, checking each setting with a care that looked, to the others, like incompetence. A Quarn cadet, whose people had designed the Academy's standard rifle, approached her station. His facets rotated, capturing every detail of her strange weapon. "You know," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "our rifles automatically adjust for wind, distance, and target movement. They have built-in targeting computers that calculate trajectories in milliseconds. They are the product of 1,000 years of refinement." He gestured at Maya's rifle. "That looks like something a child would build." Maya looked up from her notebook. Her dark eyes were calm, steady, utterly unbothered. "Does your rifle account for the Coriolis effect at this latitude?" she asked. The Quarn blinked. "The what?" "The rotation of the planet. It affects long-range shots." "My rifle does. I calibrated for it this morning." The Quarn had no answer. His rifle's automatic systems probably accounted for planetary rotation, but he had never thought about it. He had never needed to. Maya returned to her calculations. The Quarn retreated, his confidence slightly dented, but his conviction unchanged. The rifle was still ugly. Her methods were still primitive. She would fail when the real tests began. The other cadets agreed. They returned to their own preparations, their sleek rifles gleaming under the training center's lights, their confidence unshaken. Only one observer watched differently. The instructor, an ancient Kral named Kor, stood at the edge of the training ground, his battle-scarred face unreadable. He had seen 1,000 classes come and go. He had trained snipers from 100 species. He knew what excellence looked like. He watched Maya-chan adjust her rifle by hand, check her calculations against the wind, and note something in her worn notebook. He watched the other cadets laugh at her. He watched her ignore them. And he smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something the others did not. The class would learn. They always did. Some lessons were just harder than others. The first practical exercise was simple. Hit a series of targets at increasing distances, under controlled conditions. The targets were stationary, the weather was perfect, and every cadet had unlimited time to make their shots. It was, by Academy standards, almost embarrassingly easy. The other cadets approached it with the confidence of beings who had been training for this their entire lives. The Thrax went first. He lay prone, his sleek rifle resting on its automated stand, and fired 3 shots in rapid succession. Each one struck the center of its target. The rifle's automatic systems had done all the work, calculating wind, distance, trajectory, while he simply pulled the trigger. He stood, brushed dust from his uniform, and smirked at the others. "Perfect," he announced. The Voral went next. Her rifle was equally advanced, equally automatic. She fired 5 shots, each one a bullseye. The Corn followed, his multifaceted eyes calculating angles that his rifle's computer already knew. Shot after shot hit their marks with mechanical precision. The cadets watched each other's performances with professional appreciation. They were good. They knew they were good. Their equipment was the best in the galaxy, and they had been trained to use it flawlessly. Then it was Maya's turn. She walked to the firing line slowly, her ugly rifle cradled in her arms. She did not hurry. She did not seem concerned by the expectations weighing on her. She simply knelt, placed her rifle on its improvised rest, and began her preparations. The other cadets watched with barely concealed amusement. "What is she doing?" the Thrax whispered to the Voral beside him. "The targets are right there. Just shoot." The Voral shrugged. "Maybe she's trying to remember how." Maya ignored them. She pulled out her worn notebook and consulted her handwritten calculations. She adjusted a dial on her scope, then another. She checked the wind with a small device that looked ancient compared to the Academy's advanced sensors. She made a note in her book, adjusted something else, and checked the wind again. The Thrax could not contain himself. "That rifle won't work in real combat," he called out, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You'll be dead before you finish your first adjustment." Maya did not respond. She did not even look up. She simply continued her preparations, her movements slow and deliberate, her focus absolute. The other cadets exchanged glances. Some shook their heads. Others smirked. A few genuinely felt sorry for her, the human, so out of her depth, so hopelessly primitive. "She's going to fail," the Corn murmured. "And she doesn't even know it yet." Maya finally looked up. Her dark eyes swept across the range, across the targets at various distances, across the wind markers and the sky and the distant horizon. She took a breath. She let it out slowly. Then she fired. The shot was not remarkable. It was not faster or louder or more impressive than any of the others. It simply happened. The rifle recoiled. The sound echoed across the range. The bullet traveled toward its target. It struck dead center. The cadets blinked. They had expected failure. They had expected her to miss, to prove that her primitive methods were no match for their advanced technology. Instead, she had hit exactly where she aimed. "Lucky shot," the Thrax muttered. Maya did not respond. She made another adjustment, checked her notebook, and fired again. Another bullseye. Another adjustment. Another shot. Another bullseye. She worked her way through the targets methodically, each shot preceded by the same slow, deliberate preparation. She did not rush. She did not seem to care how long it took. She simply calculated, adjusted, fired, and hit. When she finished, she stood slowly, picked up her rifle, and walked back to her station. She did not look at the other cadets. She did not acknowledge their stunned silence or their shifting expressions. She simply returned to her notebook and began writing notes about something no one else could see. The Thrax stared at her, his mandibles working silently. The Voral's bioluminescence flickered with something that might have been confusion. The Corn's facets rotated rapidly, trying to process what he had just witnessed. Finally, the Thrax found his voice. "How?" he demanded. "Your rifle has no automatic systems. You calculated everything by hand. It should have taken you minutes to make those adjustments. How did you hit every target?" Maya looked up from her notebook. Her expression was calm, patient, utterly without triumph. "I've been doing this my whole life," she said. "On my world, we don't have automatic systems that do the thinking for us. We have to understand the wind, the distance, the rotation of the planet, the movement of the target, and 100 other variables. We have to feel them, not just let a computer calculate them." She paused. "It takes time to prepare. But once you understand, you only need one shot." The cadets had no answer. Their rifles could fire faster. Their systems could calculate quicker. But they had never learned to understand. They had never learned to feel. The Thrax looked at his sleek, beautiful rifle and suddenly felt as if he was holding something hollow. Maya returned to her notebook. The other cadets returned to their stations, but their confidence had been shaken. They had mocked her methods. They had laughed at her rifle. And she had outperformed them all. The instructor, Ancient Core, watched from his position at the edge of the range. His scarred face betrayed nothing, but something flickered in his ancient eyes. The lesson had begun. The instructor's name was Core. He was ancient, even by crawl standards, his carapace scarred by centuries of warfare, his eyes holding the weight of 1,000 battles. He had trained snipers for longer than most species had existed. He had seen every technique, every weapon, every approach to the art of killing from a distance. Nothing surprised him anymore. Or so he had thought. He stood at the edge of the training range, his massive frame motionless, his gaze fixed on the human cadet named Maya Chin. She lay prone on the firing line, her strange, ugly rifle resting on its improvised stand. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was slow, measured, almost meditative. The other cadets had finished their exercises. They stood in a loose group behind the observation line, watching Maya with expressions ranging from impatience to outright contempt. They had fired their shots quickly, efficiently, perfectly. Their sleek rifles had done most of the work. They were done. Maya had not fired yet. She had been lying there for 10 minutes. 15. 20. Her eyes remained closed. Her body remained perfectly still. The only movement was the occasional twitch of her fingers against the rifle's stock, as if she was feeling something no one else could sense. The cadets began to whisper. "What is she doing?" the Thrax muttered, his mandibles clicking with irritation. "The targets aren't going anywhere. Just shoot already." "Maybe she's praying," the Voral suggested, her bioluminescence flickering with amusement. "Asking her primitive gods to help her aim." "Primitive equipment for a primitive mind," the Quarn added, his facets rotating in a pattern of disdain. "She probably doesn't even know how to use that thing." The whispers grew louder, more confident. The cadets had decided that Maya's slow, deliberate approach was not patience but incompetence. They had decided that her failure was inevitable. They had decided that they were right and she was wrong. Then the instructor moved. Kor turned from his position at the edge of the range. His massive frame, which had been still as stone, suddenly radiated a presence that silenced every whisper instantly. The cadets froze under his gaze. His ancient eyes swept across them, and in that look was the weight of centuries, the memory of battles they could not imagine, the authority of someone who had forgotten more about killing than they would ever learn. He spoke. His voice was quiet, barely above a whisper, but it carried absolute authority. It did not need volume. It had weight. Only snipers. The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. The cadets stared at him, their minds racing to understand. Kor continued, still quiet, still calm. "You see a woman lying still. You see a rifle that does not glow with automatic systems. You see preparation that looks like incompetence." He paused. "I see someone who understands what a sniper actually is." He gestured at the Thrax. "You fired 3 shots in 10 seconds. Your rifle did the work. You learned nothing." He gestured at the Voral. "You fired 5 shots. All perfect. All meaningless. You did not feel the wind or the distance or the weight of the moment. Your rifle felt them for you." He gestured at the Quarn. "You calculated angles that your computer already knew. You trusted your equipment more than yourself." Then he looked at Maya, still prone, still waiting. "She trusts nothing but herself. She feels the wind on her skin. She hears the distance in the silence. She knows the rotation of this planet, the pull of its gravity, the 1,000 variables that your rifles calculate and you ignore." He paused. "She is not preparing to shoot. She is becoming one with the shot." The cadets were silent. The whispers had died completely. "When she fires," Kor said, "it will not be because her rifle told her it was time. It will be because she knows, in her bones, that the moment is right. And when she fires, she will not need a second shot." He turned back to watch Maya, his ancient eyes gleaming with something that might have been respect. "That is what a sniper is. The rest of you are just shooting." The cadets stood frozen, their confidence shattered, their certainties crumbling. They looked at Maya with new eyes that saw not a primitive with outdated equipment, but a master of a craft they had never understood. Maya's eyes remained closed. Her breathing remained slow. Her fingers continued their subtle dance against the rifle's stock. She was waiting, patient, certain. The moment was coming. Maya's eyes opened. The shift was subtle, barely perceptible, but the cadets watching felt it like a physical jolt. One moment she was still, meditative, almost asleep. The next, she was present in a way that demanded attention. Her dark eyes focused on something in the distance, something the others could not see, could not sense, could not even imagine. Her finger moved. The rifle fired. The sound was not loud, not dramatic. It was a sharp crack that echoed across the range and faded into silence. The bullet left the barrel, traveling faster than sound, faster than thought, faster than any of the cadets could track. It did not fly straight. The Thrax cadet blinked, certain his eyes were deceiving him. The bullet curved. It arced through the air, bending around the first target, then the second, following a trajectory that defied everything he had been taught about ballistics. It seemed to have a mind of its own, a purpose beyond simple physics. The Vorl's bioluminescence flared white with shock. She had seen impossible things in her life, but this, a bullet that refused to obey the laws of motion, was beyond comprehension. The Quarn's facets rotated frantically, trying to calculate the trajectory, trying to understand how any projectile could behave this way. His mind, trained in mathematics and physics, produced only error messages. The bullet struck. It hit a target that had been completely hidden from view, a small disc positioned behind a series of obstacles, placed there specifically to test the most advanced shooters. No one had even attempted to hit it. No one had thought it was possible. The disc shattered. Silence fell over the range. Absolute, complete, stunned silence. Maya lay still for a moment longer, her breathing slow, her eyes focused on the shattered target. Then she sat up, picked up her ugly rifle, and began her methodical process of cleaning and checking. She did not look at the other cadets. She did not acknowledge their shock or their disbelief. The instructor, Ancient Core, broke the silence. His voice was still quiet, still calm, but now it carried something new, a weight that pressed down on every cadet who heard it. Standard rifles are for soldiers. He walked slowly toward the firing line, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the ground. Her rifle is for something else. Something you do not understand, because you have never needed to. He stopped beside Maya, who continued her cleaning without looking up. She does not need automatic adjustments because she understands the wind, the gravity, the rotation of the planet, the movement of the target, and 100 other variables better than any computer. He paused. She does not need quick shots because she only needs one. He looked at the cadets, his ancient eyes sweeping across their stunned faces. She is a sniper. The rest of you are just shooting. The words hung in the air, heavier than any physical weight. The cadets felt them settle into their bones, into their certainties, into everything they had believed about themselves and their skills. The Thrax looked at his sleek rifle, his perfect shots, his automated systems. He had fired 3 times. Maya had fired once. He had hit 3 targets. She had hit one. But her target had been impossible, and his had been handed to him by his equipment. The Vorl looked at her own hands, her own shots, her own pride. She had never felt the wind. She had never calculated the planet's rotation. She had never needed to. Her rifle did it all. The Quarn looked at his multifaceted eyes, his mathematical mind, his certainty that he understood everything. He understood nothing. He had watched a bullet bend reality, and he could not explain it. Maya finished cleaning her rifle. She stood slowly, slung the weapon over her shoulder, and walked toward the edge of the range. She did not look back. She did not need to. Kor watched her go, his ancient face unreadable. When she was gone, he turned to the cadets one last time. You will spend the rest of your training trying to understand what she just did. Most of you will fail. A few will begin to grasp it. He paused. But none of you will ever be what she is. Because she was forged on a world where automatic systems did not exist, where every shot required understanding, where failure meant death. He gestured at their rifles. Your equipment makes you shooters. Her world made her a sniper. He walked away, leaving the cadets alone with their shattered confidence and the echo of a shot that should not have been possible. The Thrax looked at his rifle. It was still beautiful, still perfect, still the product of 1,000 years of refinement. But for the first time, it felt like a crutch. The Vorl looked at the shattered target, still visible in the distance, still impossible. She would dream about that shot for the rest of her life. The Quarn looked at his hands, his mind still racing with calculations that produced only confusion. He had always believed that understanding was power. Now he understood that some things could not be understood, only felt. The lesson was over. But it would never end. The mockery stopped. It did not fade gradually or transform into grudging acceptance. It simply ceased, as if someone had cut a thread that had been holding the cadets' certainty together. Maya packed her rifle in silence. Her movements were methodical, unhurried, the same deliberate care she had shown before the demonstration. She cleaned the barrel one last time, checked each manual adjustment, and wrapped the weapon in its worn cloth. The other cadets watched her every move, their expressions a mixture of awe and confusion, and something that might have been the beginning of understanding. The Thrax, who had been the loudest in his mockery, stood motionless. His sleek rifle hung forgotten at his side. His mandibles worked silently, as if he was trying to form words that did not exist in any language. The Vorl's bioluminescence flickered in patterns that no one had ever seen before, patterns of shame, of wonder, of a humility she had never experienced. The corn's facets had stopped rotating. They were fixed on Maya, on her strange rifle, on the impossible shot he had witnessed. His mathematical mind, trained to understand everything, had finally encountered something it could not process. Maya finished packing. She stood, slung her rifle over her shoulder, and began walking toward the edge of the range. She did not look back. She did not acknowledge the stares or the silence or the transformation she had caused. The instructor, Ancient Core, spoke one final time. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the range with the weight of centuries. Humans do not need our technology to kill at distance. The cadets turned to look at him. His scarred face was unreadable, but his ancient eyes held something that might have been respect. They need only time, patience, and the willingness to wait for the perfect moment. He paused, letting the words sink in. Remember that. It might save your life someday. Maya continued walking. She did not slow. She did not acknowledge the instructor's words. She simply disappeared into the distance, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than any sound. The cadets stood frozen for a long time. No one spoke. No one moved. No one knew what to say, or do, or think. Finally, the Thrax found his voice. It was quiet, stripped of its earlier arrogance. She knew. The whole time, she knew what she was doing. And we? He could not finish. The Vorl nodded slowly. We saw what we wanted to see. We saw primitive equipment and laughed. We never saw what was behind it. The corn's facets finally began to rotate again, slowly, thoughtfully. I have studied ballistics for 10 years. I have calculated trajectories in my sleep. I thought I understood everything about long-range killing. He paused. I understand nothing. The other cadets murmured agreement. They had learned a lesson that no classroom could teach, that no textbook could convey. They had learned that human methods, however strange, were not weaknesses. They were adaptations born on a world where survival required seeing what others missed and waiting for what others could not imagine. In the days that followed, the cadets did not mock Maya. They did not approach her either. They were too ashamed, too uncertain, too aware of how deeply they had misjudged her. But they watched her differently. They noticed how she spent her free time studying the wind, the weather patterns, the subtle changes in temperature and pressure. They noticed how she practiced for hours without firing a single shot, simply lying still, feeling the world around her. They began to ask questions, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. Maya answered them patiently, explaining things they had never considered. How to read the wind in the movement of distant grass, how to calculate the Coriolis effect without a computer, how to wait for the perfect moment without growing impatient. The Thrax asked the most questions. He had been the loudest in his mockery, and he felt the weight of his ignorance most heavily. Maya did not hold it against him. She simply answered, and he listened. On the last day of the sniper program, the cadets gathered for a final exercise. They were given a choice: use their standard rifles or try something different. Most chose their standard rifles. A few, including the Thrax, asked to try Maya's methods. They failed. They could not feel the wind the way she did. They could not wait with the same patience. They could not trust themselves the way she trusted herself. But they understood, finally, what they were trying to achieve. And that understanding was worth more than any perfect shot. Maya graduated at the top of her class. She went on to a career that became legend, her impossible shots recorded in training manuals and whispered about in barracks across the galaxy. But she never forgot the cadets who had mocked her, or the lesson they had learned. The Thrax became a sniper himself, not through natural talent, but through years of patient practice. He never matched Maya's skill, but he came closer than anyone had expected. And he never forgot the day a human with an ugly rifle had shown him what true mastery looked like. The instructor, Ancient Core, retired soon after Maya's class graduated. He had trained snipers for centuries, but he knew he would never see another like her. In his final briefing to the academy, he said simply, "Remember the human. Remember what she did. And remember that the universe is full of things you do not understand. The wise learn to see them. The foolish laugh and miss everything." The mockery had stopped. But the lesson continued, passed down through generations of snipers who would never match Maya's skill, but would spend their lives trying to understand it. And somewhere on a distant world, a human with an ugly rifle lay still, feeling the wind, waiting for the perfect moment. because that was what snipers did.